Some stories begin with a slap. Some stories begin with an argument. But mine began on the day I buried my dead wife, only to see her step out of a hidden door 2 days later and say, "Harold, they're trying to kill both of us. If you think nothing is worse than losing the person you loved for 40 years, try imagining what it feels like to discover that your own daughter is the one who signed for the poison." I used to believe family was the safest place. But Santa Fe taught me this. Sometimes the person who wants you dead carries your last name. If there is a sentence, an image, or a moment in this story that touches you, even just a small sting, leave a so I know you're still here with me. And if you want to hear more journeys like this, full of shadows, full of truth, full of people who stood back up after being pushed to the edge, you can follow. I'm grateful you're here. And if you'll allow me, I'll begin my story. Santa Fe in early April has a kind of light that's hard to describe. Golden, dry, almost dusted with the red of the desert, making everything look wrapped in some faraway memory. And in that light, I stood at the gate of Santa Fe Memorial Chapel, the adobe chapel with the terracotta roof, where I never thought I'd bring Eleanor this early. 40 years of living together, countless storms survived, and yet I still had to send off that woman with the trembling hands of a 72-year-old man. I thought the worst pain of my life was right there, but I was wrong. The real pain was the way the people I called family looked at me that morning. When I walked in, my footsteps sounded faint on the ceramic tiles, but no one turned around. Skylar, my daughter, was standing at the altar table, talking to the funeral staff with the tone of someone coordinating an event instead of a daughter who had just lost her mother. "Put the lilies on the left side. Mom didn't like them too close," she said, her hand flicking as if she'd done this 100 times. Beside her, Axel, her husband, was bent over his phone, not once, but constantly, as if his mother-in-law's funeral was interrupting something more important. I walked closer, intending to ask if she needed help, but Skylar looked at me the way you look at a stranger who accidentally walked into the wrong service. "Dad, go sit down. You're a little too emotional. Let us handle everything." Too emotional. Just 2 words. But they reduced me to an old man with no competence, no value, at my own wife's funeral. I stood there for a few seconds, feeling like someone had sucked all the air out of that adobe room. I wanted to speak, to say I was Eleanor's husband, that I knew what flowers she loved, that she and I had lived through half a century together. But Skylar had already turned away, talking to the sound technician, nodding at Axel as if I did not exist. When the service began, I sat in the front row, but every pair of eyes was on Skylar. Neighbors, friends, Eleanor's colleagues, all of them went to her, hugged her, patted her shoulder, saying words of comfort that should have been meant for me. A neighbor whispered, thinking I couldn't hear, "Skylar is so composed. Poor Harold. He must not be very clear-minded anymore." Axel glanced at his phone again. This time the screen stayed bright, long enough for me to see the words, "Wynn's Casino Operations" in the notification. He shut it off quickly, pretending to wipe his eyes. It didn't work. I felt everything slipping off its axis. Not because Eleanor was gone, but because I was being pushed out of my place as her husband, right in front of everyone. After the service, when we came home, the adobe house we had lived in for 40 years, where every brick and every beam carried my touch, I was turned into a guest. Skylar stood at the door, telling the catering staff, "Put the pastry tray in the living room. Let Dad sit in the far chair over there. He can't handle strong food smells." I had never said that in my life, but everyone listened to her, not to me. I walked past the living room where the little heart-shaped wooden chair still sat, the one I carved for Skylar when she was 7. I remembered the day she sat on it, swinging her small legs, saying, "Daddy, someday I'll build you and Mom a house in the most beautiful place in the world." As a structural engineer, I always believed in promises with foundations, And when Skylar was little, I believed her promise as firmly as I trusted any structure I ever built. Now that small chair looked tiny in a crowded room, and the child who once sat on it was coldly assigning me to the corner of my own life. By late afternoon, when the guests had mostly left, Skylar came to sit beside me. She placed her hand on my knee, a touch that looked gentle but carried no soul. "Dad, you should consider moving to Cedar Bloom Senior Residence. You alone in this big house. It's dangerous." I turned to her. "I'm not that weak." She smiled, a soft smile as sharp as shattered glass. "You don't realize it. At this age, memory isn't very clear anymore." This time I felt a real coldness, not from the words but from her eyes. Eyes that no longer saw me as her father, but as an obstacle. From afar, Axel watched us, nodding like we were discussing relocating a load of building materials. I stood up. I said nothing. I didn't argue. But something inside me understood. I was no longer safe in my own family. Right then, my phone vibrated. The caller ID read, "Valen Carter, the hospital's chief financial officer, Eleanor's longtime colleague." I stepped out onto the porch to answer. His voice was low, urgent, as if he were trying to hold himself steady. "Harold, don't tell Skylar or Axel. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, come to my office. Alone." "Why?" "Because you're in danger. And I need to show you what Eleanor discovered before everything happened." I stood still under the red Santa Fe dusk. Danger? What did Eleanor discover? And why was I not supposed to tell my own daughter? I didn't know that the next morning was when my entire life would crack open in a way no one could have imagined. When Santa Fe afternoons tilt into that honey-colored light poured from some far corner of the sky, and most of the visitors had gone, the house felt strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that belongs to a place missing the most important person in it. I stood alone in the small office beside the kitchen, watching the last rays of the day touch the wooden desk. Everything was exactly as Eleanor had left it. Her pen, her pale ash scarf, the faint lavender oil still lingering in the air. And then I saw it, the blue leather notebook, lying right next to our wedding frame, as if it had been waiting for me to open it at this exact moment. I picked it up, my hands slightly trembling, partly from grief, partly because I knew Eleanor never left anything out of place. If this notebook was here, it meant she put it here on purpose. The leather cover was soft, a little worn. I opened the first page, her familiar handwriting neat, leaning slightly to the right. "Harold, if you are reading this, take a deep breath. What comes next will require your clearest mind." I sat down, took a deep breath, just as she asked, and memory suddenly pulled me back to 1978, to a Santa Fe that looked nothing like it does now. I was 28, a young structural engineer assigned to help build the new operations wing for St. Augustine Medical Center. Santa Fe wasn't crowded then, and the hospital was just a rising adobe block. I remembered the first time I met Eleanor. She walked onto the site in a white uniform, a stack of files under her arm, hair tied back except for a few strands blown loose by the desert wind. She looked around, then at me, and said bluntly, "You're the new engineer, right? You're the one who will decide whether the east ceiling collapses in the next 20 years? I laughed, caught off guard by her directness. "Hopefully it won't collapse. But if you stand under it like that, the pressure on me gets a lot higher." She laughed, a laugh whose rhythm I would later memorize. That day we ate lunch by the scaffolding, and Eleanor opened her notebook, saying, "If you want to survive long in this field, you have to record everything. Not to remember, but to follow the logic when trouble comes." Then she wrote on a new page, "Event, time, action, sensation, abnormality. That's how I track every issue." Back then, I thought it was just a meticulous manager's habit. I never imagined that 45 years later, that method would be the last thread holding me upright. I turned to the next page, dates written in her small script. November, Harold forgot. His keys for the second time this week. Axel stood near the medicine cabinet too long. Schuyler asked the market value of the Calle Luna house 3 times this month. I held my breath. Another line. Harold said he felt dizzy after morning coffee. Not the first time. Check the bottle in the kitchen again. I leaned back. Every sentence peeled away a layer of memory I had brushed aside or intentionally ignored, thinking it was old age. But Eleanor, she always saw one step ahead of me. I kept reading, each line reviving moments I had dismissed as trivial. The morning I couldn't find my reading glasses, the night I was exhausted for no clear reason, the time I asked Schuyler about a strange call, and she just gave a small smile and changed the subject. Back then, I thought it was aging. Now I wasn't sure. I set the notebook down and pressed my hands to my face. The grief of her death hadn't even settled, and already a new feeling was rising. Suspicion. Not of Eleanor, but of those who were supposed to protect me. As night fell over Santa Fe, the wind carried dust and yucca blossoms through every crack in the house. I went to the back shed to grab a few things. When I switched on the light, I saw it instantly. The security camera at the back door, tilted nearly 20 degrees to the left. I froze. I was the one who installed that system. I knew it couldn't shift unless someone touched it, and I had reviewed the footage last night. The angle had been fine. That meant someone had stood there some time after the funeral. I crouched to check the base. Dust streaks. For the first time in months, I felt a real shiver. Not because Eleanor was gone, but because someone, unknown, had been standing by my back door. No forced entry, no noise, just standing there, then leaving. I went back to the office and opened the notebook again, pulled by an instinct I couldn't explain. A page near the end was dog-eared. Eleanor never folded pages unless they mattered. I opened it. The final line was written in darker ink. If Harold is reading this, it means they have started. Trust no one except Valen Carter. I froze. My throat went dry like the desert outside. They? Who were they? And what did Eleanor know before she disappeared from my life? The hallway light flickered as if someone had just walked past. I turned. Nothing. And in that moment, for the first time, I understood that Eleanor's death might only be the surface of something larger, darker, and far closer than I ever imagined. The next morning, I drove along St. Francis Drive in the cold Santa Fe dawn. The sky was still dim, the adobe rooftops covered in a thin layer of frost like powder. I could not remember how much I had slept, only the feeling of jolting awake in the middle of the night because of a sound that felt like someone touching the back door. But no one was there, only darkness, and the truth that I no longer trusted any silence. Around that house, the glass building of the St. Augustine Medical Finance Division rose ahead, a modern block in the middle of the old city. I parked, inhaled deeply, and went inside. The receptionist recognized me. I had come here many times when Eleanor still worked, but this morning her eyes slid over me with something like pity. I walked down the long hallway, the tile floor echoing softly, until I stood before the frosted glass door of Valen Carter's office. The door was already open. Carter stood there, not looking like his usual confident self. He glanced at me, his voice lowered. "Come in, Harold. Lock the door." Not the greeting I expected, but I did as he asked. His office was still tidy. Wooden desk, color-coded folders, a large window facing the Sangre de Cristo Mountains shifting in the morning light. But there was something in him I had never seen before. Tension. He turned, walked to the coded file cabinet, and typed a long sequence. The latch clicked, and he pulled out a thick file, the cover marked, Markham Case, Confidential, submitted to DA 3 weeks prior. I froze. 3 weeks ago, before Eleanor died? "Sit down, Harold," he said. "I should have shown you this sooner. But Eleanor, she wanted to wait." My heart stumbled. Carter opened the first file. Inside was a stack of papers, each stamped by the hospital. This is security footage from the medication wing. He placed a USB drive on the table and pushed it toward me. I reviewed samples, he continued. In the footage, Skylar stands next to the medication cabinet for almost 3 minutes. That area is not for non-staff. But she said, she was looking for your wife. My hands curled into fists. Skylar had no reason to... Wait, he cut in gently. Keep looking. He opened the second set of documents. Inside were enlarged signatures. 2 versions of mine, one real, one forged. I had the hospital's forensic department analyze the handwriting, Carter said. There are at least 7 inconsistencies. This signature was used on a healthcare power of attorney, a POA assigning authority to Skylar. A chill ran through me. I never signed anything. I know. He placed a photocopy on the desk. Healthcare power of attorney. Effective immediately. My signature sat on it, but I had never touched that paper. Carter looked directly into my eyes. Eleanor discovered it 3 months ago. My knees weakened. I had to grip the chair. He opened another file. Medical reports. This one says you showed cognitive decline, but the doctor who signed this... Carter pointed at the name. There is no such person. No, Dr. Brian Kovach exists in the New Mexico system. I stared at the words, but my mind could barely absorb them. Harold, Carter said softly, there is reason to believe someone has been trying to build a record that you're losing capacity. Eleanor saw the pattern early. He paused, giving me space to breathe. She had been working with the district attorney's elder abuse special unit. All of these documents were submitted 3 weeks ago. I felt dizzy, part betrayal, part the weight of realizing Eleanor had been fighting something enormous alone. Why didn't Eleanor tell me? I managed, my voice raw. Because she needed certainty, and because she feared you might expose the investigation if you reacted emotionally. Eleanor was extremely logical and extremely brave. She investigated for 6 months. He pulled out another envelope, thinner, and placed it before me. This is the card of her private attorney. She avoided the hospital's legal team to prevent leaks. Her name is Alicia Rowan. I held the envelope, feeling my palm go cold. Carter exhaled, then said the sentence that numbed me from head to toe. Harold, someone wants to see you. I looked up. His expression wavered between sympathy and hesitation. But before I open the door to the adjoining room, you must calm yourself. Truly calm. I'm afraid you might not be able to handle it. A streak of cold ran down my spine. Who was in the next room? And why was Carter afraid I would not survive the moment of seeing them? I sat frozen when Carter said that. In that moment, everything around me, the hum of the air conditioner, the light from the window, even the smell of old paper seemed to vanish. All that remained was the pounding of my heart in my chest. 68 years on this earth, I have lived through earthquakes, job loss, losing siblings, and losing my parents. But nothing had ever felt like this, like the ground was splitting open beneath my feet. Carter stood, walked to the wooden door inside his office, and placed his hand on the knob. He did not open it immediately. He turned to me. Harold, you need to stay calm. I mean that. What's about to happen will be hard to believe. I nodded, though my throat felt sealed. My hands were clenched so tightly the knuckles had gone white. Carter opened the door, and the person who stepped out was Eleanor. Not a memory, not a hallucination, not something I imagined because I missed her too much. It was Eleanor, in the flesh, standing only a few steps from me. Gray coat, hair tied back, eyes slightly dark from lack of sleep, but still the eyes I knew so well that I almost broke down the second I saw them. I shot to my feet. Eleanor took one step toward me. Harold! My legs went weak. The whole world tilted sideways. Carter shouted, Let me get the doctor! Before I collapsed, Eleanor caught my arm, her hand warm, real, not the icy cold I had imagined in a coffin for the past 2 days. Carter signaled, and an on-call physician, white coat, name badge reading Dr. Emilio Sandoval, stepped out of the adjoining room, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. "Sit down, Mr. Whitford. Deep breaths. I'm right. Here." I sank into the chair, not because I was frail, but because my heart could not withstand the shock. I stared at Eleanor as if a person had walked back from the other side. You're alive?" She nodded. Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'm sorry I had to do this to you. It was the only way." "Why? Why would you let me think you died?" Eleanor tightened her grip on my hand. "Harold, you're in danger, and so am I." Carter pulled up a chair and sat across from me. "Let Eleanor explain everything." Eleanor inhaled deeply. "Harold, someone put digitalis in my morning coffee. Not a lot, just enough to cause arrhythmias, but taken consistently for weeks, it would look like a natural cardiac death." I felt the blood drain out of my body. Eleanor continued. "At the hospital, the DA saw the troponin levels in my labs. They didn't match a normal heart attack. Dr. Sandoval grew suspicious. And when I mentioned digitalis, everything lined up." Dr. Sandoval nodded. "I reported immediately to the district attorney's elder abuse special unit. They opened a case that same night." Carter added, "And they activated Section 425101, the New Mexico Protective Medical Order. When a victim's life is threatened, they are moved to a secure medical wing and temporarily removed from all public records." Eleanor went on, "That night, they moved me into the Witness Protection Medical Wing, a sealed room, no name, no public entry in any system. Only Carter, Dr. Sandoval, and the attorney Alicia Rowan knew." My voice cracked. "And the funeral?" Carter explained. "The funeral home used a symbolic casket under DA order. That's why it had to remain closed. Fully legal." Eleanor looked directly into my eyes. "I saw you standing in the cold outside the chapel. I wanted to run out and hold you. But if I appeared before we had enough evidence, then we both would have died." Carter finished the sentence she could not say. "Harold," Eleanor whispered, "I know who did it." My throat tightened. "Skylar, didn't she?" Eleanor was silent for a few long seconds, 3 seconds that felt like an entire lifetime, then whispered, "Not just her?" Dr. Sandoval adjusted the heart rate monitor beside me. Carter stood, walked to the other interior door, and placed his hand on the knob. "There is someone who wants to see you, and you must stay very calm." He turned the handle. The door opened. I could still feel my body trembling after Eleanor stepped out from the side room. But that trembling had not fully settled when she leaned toward me, her eyes sharp with the kind of alertness that meant someone could be listening from behind any wall. "Harold, I need you to understand exactly how dangerous this is," she said, her voice low but tight like a pulled wire. Carter moved to lock the door again. The soft click echoed like a seal being closed. Eleanor tightened her grip on my wrist, then began. "On the 3rd day in the protective wing, I had to be moved to the ICU for troponin tests and another EKG. That was the moment when, if luck had slipped even a little, I would have been discovered." A cold line ran down my spine. "Axel was right there in the cardiology hallway," Eleanor continued. "He walked slowly, not like someone visiting a patient. When he got close to the testing room, Dr. Sandoval had to yank the privacy curtain shut and say loudly, 'No entry, high infection risk.' If I had breathed any louder, he would have seen me." Carter added, "Our private investigator tracked him for over 3 months. He never once went to the cardiac wing without a specific reason. His being there that day was not random." Eleanor lowered her head, her voice dimming. The look he gave the ICU door, it wasn't a visitor's look. It was the look of someone checking whether the prey was dead yet. My stomach knotted hard. Eleanor went on, "Harold, that wasn't the first time I suspected something." She looked at me for a long time before saying, "Do you remember my blue blood pressure bottle?" "Yes. You always kept it in the second drawer." until the day Schuyler visited and offered to help me clean the cabinet. 30 minutes later, the bottle was gone. 3 hours after that, it appeared in my coat pocket, the cap opened, and some pills discolored. That was the first moment I knew. She wasn't our Schuyler anymore. Carter opened a screen and played a video. Schuyler using a computer in her apartment, placing an order for medical sedatives from Sun West Medical Wholesalers, the kind only medical staff or someone with a license could legally buy. Every shipment went to 24/7 lockers, Carter said, never to the house, no trace. A perfect plan. The side room door opened, and Alicia Rowan, the elder abuse attorney, stepped in. Her expression was flat, without a hint of softness. "The DA is ready with arrest warrants," Alicia said, "but we're missing one critical element, intent with urgency, the proof they are preparing to act within days." I asked, what do they have to do for it to be enough? There has to be a countdown indicator, a final step. Without it, a judge will reject urgent arrest on grounds of insufficient immediate threat. My heart pounded against my ribs. I left Carter's office floating somewhere between hope and horror. When I opened my front door, I knew instantly something was wrong. The wooden chair was out of place. The knife rack had new fingerprints. The file cabinet where I kept the house papers cracked open, as if someone had touched it and then backed away. I stepped into the kitchen, bracing myself on the counter, and right then, my phone buzzed. A new email from Schuyler Whitford. Subject, Dad. I opened it. Just one line, but enough to make the floor under. My feet turned to ice. "Dad, don't do anything stupid. We're coming." Not, "I'm coming," but "we're coming." Not one person, not accidental, not concerned, but a signal, a warning, a sentence. And in that moment, I understood. The darkness had already reached my doorstep. I was still standing in the kitchen, clutching my phone as if letting go would make the whole house collapse. The words from Schuyler's email, "Dad, don't do anything stupid. We're coming," kept echoing in my head like an alarm siren. The sound of tires grinding over gravel came right after. I glanced out the window and saw Schuyler's silver SUV pulling up in front of the porch. There was no time left to hide what I felt or prepare for anything. The car doors opened. Schuyler got out first, carrying a large paper bag. Axel followed, holding a tray of steaming food, something they would never bring unless there was an agenda. They climbed the steps, wearing expressions they had clearly rehearsed, a blend of concern, pity, and a calculated sort of affection. Schuyler knocked twice, then opened the door herself, as if this were her house. "Dad, we came to be with you," she said, her voice soft enough that, if I didn't know the truth, I might have believed her. Axel gave me a guilty smile. "I brought some food you like. I'll set it in the kitchen, okay?" I said nothing. I just stood there watching the two of them play the role of dutiful children inside the same house they had torn apart only hours earlier. Schuyler set the bag down, then suddenly hugged me. A hug too long, too tight, too staged. "Dad, we're worried about you. You shouldn't stay alone too much." Axel added, "You don't have to pretend to be strong. Seniors often become unstable after a loss." He handed me a blue brochure. "Behavioral Health Counseling for Seniors. Early Dementia Screening." A gaslighting strike. Subtle but blatant. I was about to respond when Schuyler began scanning the house. Fast, sharp, like she was checking whether she had left any trace behind. And then the mid-twist hit. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something so familiar, my heart seemed to skip half a beat. Eleanor's blue leather notebook. "I found this in your room," Schuyler said lightly, though her eyes were anything but light. The notebook Eleanor said she had hidden in a locked compartment, something only she and I knew existed, was now in Schuyler's hand, which meant they had searched the house thoroughly and intentionally. I forced out, "Just leave it there." But what chilled me more was not the notebook. The camera in my bedroom had been turned slightly out of position. No one knew I had a camera. No one, except whoever was searching for something. Schuyler and Axel kept performing their little act, then left with one final line, as soft as air but as cold as a blade. "We only want what's best for you, Dad." The door closed. The house fell so silent I could hear my heartbeat stutter. I walked straight to the wooden cabinet where Eleanor kept her most important things, opened it, and felt like someone had punched me in the chest. The USB containing Eleanor's entire investigation was gone. Not misplaced, not dropped, taken. And in that moment, I understood. They knew Eleanor had been investigating, and now they knew that I knew. I arrived at Alicia Rowan's office just as the last Santa Fe sunlight faded, a thin red glow settling over the Sangre de Cristo, range like a warning of an approaching storm. Eleanor had texted me that she and Carter were waiting in the conference room on the 3rd floor, the one with curtains covering every glass panel so no one could see inside. When I walked in, Alicia, Carter, Eleanor, and a man I didn't know were already seated around the table. Eleanor introduced him. "Harold, this is Miguel Aranda, our PI." Miguel shook my hand, his grip firm and solid like a man used to trailing danger. Alicia opened a thick folder and said, "Mr. Whitford, it's time to move to Phase 2. Her voice was low, calm in a way that sent a chill through the room. "3-tier plan," she said, writing on the board. "Tier 1, collect evidence of intent with urgency. We need proof they're preparing to act in the next few days. Searching the house, taking the USB, turning the camera. Those are strong signs, but not enough for the DA to issue an arrest warrant without getting blocked by procedural challenges. Tier 2, stage the insurance resignature meeting." Alicia turned to me. "We'll send an email inviting Schuyler to come sign the beneficiary update. They'll believe you're transferring your assets to them and will show up on their own. Carter will act as the witness. Tier 3, legal mic placement." Alicia handed me a device the size of a thumb. "New Mexico is a one-party consent state. As long as you agree, the recording is completely legal." I held the device, light as a coin but powerful enough to collapse an entire murder plot. Miguel opened his laptop. "Schuyler already scheduled an appointment for you at Southwest Neurological Center this coming Friday. Memory decline assessment, guardianship recommendation evaluation." I gripped the edge of the table. "She wants to put me under guardianship and lock you in a care facility so they can control everything," Miguel said bluntly. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "Harold, that is the final step before they act." Carter placed a folder on the table. "You need to see this." Inside was an email exchange between Axel and a loan shark named Vance from Desert Mesa Casino. "I need 40,000 by Friday. If not, I'll take the old man's assets. All I need is the wife to sign the POA." Heat surged in my chest, not anger, but the realization that he had been willing to kill my wife to pay off gambling debt. Alicia was about to close her laptop when her phone vibrated sharply. She checked the screen, her face shifting before she answered. A voice from the Elder Abuse Unit came through. "We have the arrest warrant, but to make it airtight, we need them to appear at the location you've arranged and show intent to seize assets during the conversation." Alicia replied crisply, "We'll get them to the exact spot." 3 seconds of silence dropped onto the conference table like a stone. Eleanor placed her hand on mine. "Harold, this is our one chance to end all of it." Carter said, "You're not alone. We'll be right behind the door." Miguel nodded. "Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. The insurance signing. Everything will be recorded." I looked down at my own hands, hands that had been shaking for weeks. Now they were steady, calm, certain, ready, and I understood, starting tomorrow, I would no longer be the victim. The VIP client meeting room at Santa Fe Federal that morning looked no different from any regular financial consultation appointment. A walnut table, brown leather chairs, soundproofed walls, and a neatly hung New Mexico landscape behind the banker's back. Only one thing felt out of place. My old pocket watch lying still in the middle of the table, its scratched, faded metal glinting like an elderly witness invited back to the scene. I sat there in a gray wool coat and a buttoned shirt, my hands clasped together. I could hear my heartbeat, but when my voice came out, it was strangely calm. "Thank you for arranging a private room for me," I told the banker. "I just want to review the insurance, the accounts, for peace of mind. My daughter will be here soon." Behind the one-way glass, Carter stood with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on me. Beside him, Alicia was adjusting the headset connected to the recording system. The district attorney stood slightly back, holding a thick file, and the Elder Abuse Task Force had already activated their body cams, tiny green lights blinking on their vests. Everyone was silent except for the air conditioner and Alicia's pen tapping lightly against her folder. "Are you sure?" Carter murmured. "Once we step through this second peak, there will be no way back for anyone." Alicia pressed her lips together, especially for Skylar. Carter didn't answer. He just stared at the pocket watch through the glass, knowing I didn't bring it here for decoration. The glass door opened. Skylar walked in first. White shirt, blue tie, hair neatly combed, face frozen into the role of the dutiful child she had performed for months. Axel followed right behind, gray suit, an expensive watch flashing on his wrist, his hand resting on my shoulder in a calculated gesture of warmth. "Dad," Skylar smiled, leaning slightly toward me. "I'm here. The bank called, saying you needed help checking some insurance paperwork, so I asked Axel to come along, just in case." "Hello, Mr. Harold," Axel added smoothly. "Santa Fe Federal is where I do business. Whatever you need, I'll handle it." I looked at the two faces that had lied to me for the past year, and my eyes flickered, not from fear, but from steadying my voice. I nudged the pocket watch toward the center of the table. "Before we talk about insurance," I said slowly, "I want to talk about time." Skylar frowned. "Time for what?" I opened the watch. A soft click echoed, the old hour hand trembling as it caught the light. "The time you two thought I was running out of," I said, my eyes fixed on her. "And the time you spent my money, planted drugs in my house, and thought I would never find out." Behind the glass, the district attorney nodded. Stage 1 was beginning. Another banker knocked and entered with a stack of documents. "Mr. Harold asked us to print detailed statements," she said, "all credit cards and recent cash transactions." I took the folder, calmly flipped through the pages, then slid it toward Skylar. "Daughter," I said, "can you explain why a credit card under my name has an additional authorized card I never signed for? Used to spend $45,000 in 6 months, mostly at resorts, fine dining restaurants, and luxury car rentals." Skylar let out a tight laugh, pretending to be relaxed. "Dad, we told you already. I just borrowed the limit to help with the business. I was going to pay it back." I tapped my finger on the next page. The lines printed clearly. "Cash withdrawal, $67,000. "And what is this?" My voice cut sharper. $67,000 withdrawn from my savings account, exactly 3 days after you took me to that hospital consultation and told me to sign some administrative forms. The forgery was so sloppy, my lawyer laughed for 2 hours. Axel stepped in, trying to salvage the moment. "Mr. Harold, maybe the bank made a mistake." The banker immediately replied, "We triple-checked. These withdrawals were done in person using a power of attorney document with a scanned signature from paperwork you supposedly submitted at your previous appointment. But the handwriting expert confirmed it was reconstructed." Behind the glass, Carter whispered, "Hit." Alicia typed quickly, 45,000 credit, 67,000 unauthorized withdrawal, confirmed by bank. Skylar's face turned slightly pale. Axel tightened both hands on the table, but still forced a polite smile. "All right," I said, closing the folder. "That is money, and money can be earned again. But there is something you took from me that you cannot give back." I placed my hand on the pocket watch and turned it slightly. "That is my breath." Alicia signaled to the technician. A small beep echoed in everyone's earpiece. Layer 2. The door opened again. A man in a simple black suit walked in, wearing the badge of a major pharmaceutical distributor. "I'm Raymond Collins, representative of Southwest Medical Supplies," he introduced himself. "The bank allowed me to attend because this is tied to a financial transaction." I nodded. "Mr. Collins, please remind them of the order you confirmed last week." Raymond opened his tablet and read, "Yes. Last month, our company received an order for high-dose digitalis, along with syringes, tubing, and an IV set. The order was paid with a credit card under the name of Mr. Harold Whitford, but the delivery address was the home where you currently live with your daughter and son-in-law." Axel shot up. "This is ridiculous. I'm a doctor. Digitalis is a cardiac medication. "Correct," I cut in, my gaze turning cold. "You are a doctor, and you are the only person in that house who knows exactly how to use a dosage that makes a heart attack look as natural as possible." Carter gripped the headset. The district attorney frowned slightly but waited for the next layer. Alicia added another note. "Digitalis plus home delivery plus doctor's son-in-law equals intent." "We also have the real wholesaler log," Raymond continued. "In it, the person who placed the order identified himself as Dr. Axel Donovan, acting on behalf of patient Harold Whitford." Axel swallowed hard. "That was a staff error." I tilted my head. "Then what about the syringe found in my fishing tool cabinet? The one with digitalis residue that the lab confirmed? Was that also a staff error?" The air thickened. The sound of the air conditioner suddenly felt louder, blowing through the widening space between father and child. Alicia raised her hand. "Layer 3. A click sounded from a small speaker at the corner of the table. A female voice, familiar enough for Skylar to snap her head around instantly, filled the room. "Just be patient," Skylar's voice said in the recording, cold and tired. "Dad won't make it to August. We just have to act like we care a little longer." The room went dead silent. I looked straight at the living version of that sentence. "Do you remember where you said that, Skylar?" Skylar opened her mouth, but no sound came out. A vein pulsed at her temple. "My living room," I said. "The night after you pretended to take me for a capacity evaluation. You thought I was asleep. You didn't know the security system you claimed you installed to keep me safe had its password changed by me long ago. Only the porch camera could still be turned manually, and they had turned it 20 degrees to avoid the doorway." Behind the glass, one elder abuse officer whispered, "Got her." Axel growled, "This is an invasion of privacy. You can't invasion of privacy." I let out a dry laugh, as brittle as Montana mountain wind. "You put drugs on my table, in my pocket, in my bloodstream, and you want to talk to me about privacy? All right," the district attorney said, adjusting his tie, eyes never leaving the scene inside. "It's time." Alicia nodded. "Layer 4. The side door next to the one-way glass opened. A familiar figure with neatly brushed silver hair and a cream-colored shawl walked into the room. "Eleanor." Skylar jolted like she had been shocked. "Mom?" Her face twisted in a split second, from surprise to fear to a ghost-white horror, as if her own past had just walked back into the room, holding everything she tried to bury. "Mom, you were dead!" Skylar screamed, stumbling backward. "No, no, no, Dad, what did you do? What did you all do?" Eleanor didn't look at her. She walked to me and placed her hand on my shoulder, thin but steady. "I heard enough through the bedroom wall," Eleanor said, her voice hoarse but firm. "I heard my daughter and her husband talk about getting rid of her father, like throwing out an old cabinet. I signed the statement. I didn't want to, but you left me no choice." Skylar backed up, hitting a chair. Who pulled you out? Who?" I tilted the pocket watch. The second hand kept moving, not slowing for even a moment. "Time," I said softly, "and the law." The meeting room door opened for the final time. 2 police officers entered, followed by the district attorney holding a document stamped in red. Their body cams were recording everything. Skylar's face, Axel's clenched fists, my open pocket watch, Eleanor's eyes. Skylar Whitford. Axel Donovan, the district attorney read, voice clear and cold. By the authority of this court and this warrant, you are under arrest for suspicion of elder financial abuse, attempted poisoning, and conspiracy. A ripple of "oh" spread outside the room. Through the glass, I saw bank customers standing up, turning around and holding their phones to record. A banker even covered her mouth in shock. The image of the dutiful daughter and perfect doctor's son-in-law that Skylar and Axel had curated for so long collapsed in minutes. Skylar thrashed as the handcuffs locked around her wrists. "You can't do this to me," she screamed. I was just... Axel was turned and cuffed as well. "I'm a doctor. You're a suspect," one officer said flatly. "The rest is up to the court." I didn't say anything. I simply closed the pocket watch. The soft click sounded again, this time like an old door being locked forever. As they were dragged out of the room, between 2 rows of bankers and customers filming, Skylar suddenly lifted her head, eyes bloodshot, staring straight at me. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she shouted. "But it's not just me and Axel." Carter froze. "There's someone else involved," Skylar screamed, her voice cracking through the hallway. "You don't know anything." Her cries echoed off the glass and tile, carrying all the way to the front lobby, where curious customers stepped closer, cameras still rolling, comments already popping up on the short live streams. I remained seated in the meeting room, my hand resting on the pocket watch. Carter looked at the district attorney, both of them knowing that Peak 2 had passed. Yet another storm had just been planted for what comes next. I left the VIP meeting room of Santa Fe Federal when the sun was already high, the light slanting through the glass panels and spreading warm yellow streaks across the hallway, but inside me there was only a coldness like stone. Not because Skylar was handcuffed, not because Axel was screaming, but because my daughter's final words kept echoing in my head. "It's not just me and Axel, there's someone else." The district attorney asked me to follow them back to the office to complete my statement. I sat in a small room, staring at a cup of coffee I didn't bother to drink, my hand resting on the pocket watch as if it were the only intact memory I had left. The door opened. Carter, Alicia, and the district attorney walked in carrying 3 thick files. The district attorney set the first one down. "Mr. Harold, Skylar wasn't lying. There really is a third person." I felt my heartbeat slow. The district attorney pointed to a photo inside the folder. "Jacob Herrera, an employee of Santa Fe Federal, a specialist in processing authorizations. He is the one who activated the fake POA in the system. He changed access rights, opened the additional card, and verified the information to legitimize every transaction Skylar needed." Carter added, "He received $6,000 from Skylar and Axel's joint account just 2 days before the fake POA was entered." I swallowed. $6,000. $6,000 for my entire life being placed on a cutting table. The district attorney opened the second file. "Tanya Moore, a broker at Soltero and Pierce Realty." Alicia said, "She scheduled you for an elder downsizing consultation at Skylar's request. We have the message. If he goes into a facility before next month, we can close this quarter." We. That word felt like a nail driven into my chest. The district attorney opened the third file, Axel's written statement. I stared at the shaky lines of my son-in-law's handwriting, the handwriting of a man pressed against a cliff edge. "Vance said if I didn't pay $40,000 before Friday, he would take the old man's assets. I lost the money. Skylar said signing the POA would fix it. I thought it was just paperwork. Then everything went too far." Eleanor placed her hand on my shoulder. "Axel was truly desperate, but he still made the wrong choice." I asked, "What about Skylar?" The district attorney answered, "Skylar acted on her own. No one forced her." Eleanor took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "Harold, I have to tell you this. The first time I saw Skylar change was when she started college. I gave her $2,000 to fix her computer. She looked at me coldly and said, 'Your money is going to be mine anyway.' I was scared from that day. I leaned back, feeling the chill from the Santa Fe floor climb up my spine. Skylar didn't change in one night. She changed piece by piece, through casual words that turned cruel. The district attorney stood, closing the files. 'Mr. Harold, you will have to testify tomorrow.' I looked up. 'Tomorrow?' Alicia nodded. 'Emergency hearing at 9 a.m. This is the hardest part.' Eleanor held my hand, her eyes steady but wounded. 'Harold, you're not just testifying for me, you're testifying for yourself. This is the moment you take your life back.' I tightened my grip on the pocket watch. Tomorrow, court, truth, and justice. A new chapter was opening, one I could not run from. The next morning, the November cold of Santa Fe cut straight to the bone as I stepped up the courthouse stairs. Outside, reporters crowded at the entrance, microphones and cameras raised high, shouting my name, but I only lowered my head and walked in, my hand gripping Eleanor's pocket watch tightly. Inside, the hallway was packed. Carter and Alicia were already waiting. "They've moved Skylar and Axel to the temporary detention room," Carter said. Eleanor stood beside them, her eyes steady, her voice soft but firm. "Harold, today is the day the truth stands up." When the doors of courtroom 304 opened, I saw a sea of people. The press seats were full, and long rows of spectators lined the walls, because there was no space left. Judge Marian Valdez entered, the gavel striking sharply. Emergency hearing on the charges of elder financial abuse, attempted poisoning, and conspiracy, now in session. Skylar was brought in first, hands cuffed, face pale. Her eyes searched for me, but received only silence. Axel followed, trying to stay composed, but his hands trembled nonstop. Alicia called me to the witness stand. I placed my hand on the recorder. My daughter made me believe I was losing my memory. She told me I was tired, that I was forgetting things, that I was imagining things. She told me to sign administrative forms, but they were actually power of attorney documents, allowing them to withdraw money, open additional cards, and prepare to transfer my assets. The courtroom fell silent, broken only by the scribbling of reporters' pens. Dr. Emilio Sandoval was called next. Mrs. Eleanor Whitford's troponin levels did not match a natural heart attack. The EKG showed arrhythmia caused by chemical influence. We found digitalis in her blood. Digitalis cannot appear on its own. It must be administered from the outside. Axel lowered his head. Broker Tanya Moore followed, eyes red, voice shaking. I processed the elder downsizing file at Skylar's request. She said, "Mr. Harold wouldn't be at home much longer." Skylar burst into sobs, collapsing over the table. The district attorney rose to request, "Given the level of danger and the risk of further interference with witnesses, we request remand without bail." Judge Valdez brought down the gavel. "Granted, both defendants will be held without bail." Camera shutters exploded in a frenzy. Skylar screamed, "Mom! Dad! Don't let them take me!" Axel sank into his chair, his face ashen. As I stepped down from the witness stand, an officer approached and handed Alicia a small envelope. "Letter from the Women's Holding Unit for Mr. Harold." I opened the envelope. The handwriting trembled, ink smudged. "Dad, I need to see you. I need to tell you the rest. Not everything is what you think. Please, come." I stood still, the pocket watch heavy in my hand. One dark chapter had closed, but another door, the door to the truth from my own daughter's mouth, was opening. That evening, Santa Fe was as quiet as a winter lake, with only the last slant of daylight resting across the stone steps outside the porch. I sat at the dining table, the yellow lamp casting a small circle of light onto the old wooden surface. Skylar's letter lay in front of me, its edges slightly wrinkled as if she had held it tightly for a long time before asking the officer to deliver it. I took a deep breath and opened it. Schuyler's handwriting had become smaller, no longer carrying the sharp confidence I once saw when she signed those forged documents. Dad, I'm not writing this letter to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm not writing to justify myself either. I only want to admit one thing. I chose evil. I stopped. The word evil, direct, cold, without hiding. No one forced me. Not Axel, not the debt, not life. I chose the easy path, money, and I chose the cruelest way to get it. I know I killed my own family long before the court ruled anything. A sharp pain passed through my chest, not because of the letter, but because a memory surfaced suddenly. Schuyler, at 7, sitting on the little wooden heart chair I carved for her. She hugged her knees, smiling freely, handing me a colored pencil. Dad, when I grow up, I want to build houses with you. Houses with really big windows so the sunlight can come in. I swallowed the tightness rising in my throat. That little girl on the heart-shaped chair had disappeared long ago. In the letter, Schuyler continued, Mom once said, "You'll use your intelligence at the right time, or the wrong one." I chose the wrong time. I know you're hurt. I know you're disappointed. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. A drop of water fell on the edge of the letter. I didn't know whose it was. If there is a next life, I hope I won't be a burden to you and Mom. I folded the letter. People think the pain lies in harsh words, but in truth, it lies in the bare fact that the child I raised for more than 30 years had already become a stranger long before today. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it so the Santa Fe night wind could come in. I tore the letter into small pieces and let them fall onto the porch, the wind carrying them away like it was taking the last remnants of something broken. When I returned to the table, I placed Eleanor's pocket watch into the drawer and closed it gently. The soft click sounded like locking away an old door inside my heart. Eleanor stepped toward me, saying nothing, just placing her hand on my shoulder. A light, warm embrace, not to soothe, but simply to stand with the truth. Harold, Eleanor whispered, family is the people who want us to live, not the people who want us to disappear. I leaned my forehead against her shoulder, not crying, but feeling a part of myself grow lighter. As the late afternoon light fell through the window, casting a long amber streak across the living room floor, I looked toward the distant mountains. This house, once full of Schuyler's laughter, now held only empty spaces, and I knew my next decision. Santa Fe holds on to many things, but it also knows when to let go. I straightened up and took a deep breath. It's time to sell the house, I said softly. Eleanor nodded. She understood. One chapter was ending, so the final chapter could begin. 1 month after the final hearing, Eleanor and I left Santa Fe on a morning so clear you could see the thin veil of mist lying over the Sangre de Cristo range. The old pickup carried 2 suitcases, a few cardboard boxes, and the pocket watch I had kept in the drawer for weeks, not forgotten, but saved for a new chapter. The road descending into the Rio Grande Valley opened like a red-brown ribbon across the basin. The wind carried the smell of damp earth and the soft sound of river water brushing against rock. Our new adobe house sat on a small rise, with clay-colored walls, pine-wood doors, a traditional curved roofline, and a sagebrush, blooming pale purple blossoms out front. Not large, not fancy, but just enough for 2 people who had once run from death to begin again. The afternoon we moved in, Clay and Belle, the couple in the house to the right, knocked on our door. Clay brought a basket of oranges, and Belle carried warm cornbread. We heard the new neighbors are a couple who survived. A lot, Belle said gently, her eyes kind like a patch of early winter sunlight. Clay set the basket down. Around here, everyone's been hurt by family in one way or another. We get by because we hold each other up. That evening, they took us to a meeting of the Elder Survivors Circle, a small community room, folding chairs in a circle, soft yellow lights, and the smell of fresh black coffee. No tears, only nods from people who had once had their trust broken by those they loved most. A silver-haired man in the corner said, "At our age, we don't need more relatives. We need real people." Eleanor took my hand, and I knew we had found the right place to land. 5 days later, the post office delivered an official document from the county court. Skylar, 6 years in custody. Axel, 8 years in custody with special supervision. I did not feel relief, nor any new pain, only a quiet sense, like the lake had finally stopped stirring. I folded the paper and placed it in the drawer beside the pocket watch. One night, at the end of the month, after a simple dinner with Clay and Belle, I stepped onto the porch. The Rio Grande breeze was as gentle as a breath. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the adobe walls a glowing orange like heated metal. It made every small crack, every trace of time on the wall. Beautiful in an honest way, I stood there for a long while until my shadow stretched across the golden earth. Eleanor came out and leaned lightly against me. "What are you thinking?" she asked. I watched the sunset, then said softly, not like a philosophy, but like something I had learned with blood and tears. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who want you alive. The breeze brushed against the adobe wall, carrying the words out into the valley. And for the first time, after a long year filled with darkness, I felt real peace. If you've stayed with me all the way to the end of this story, from the cold funeral in Santa Fe, to the hearing under the flash of cameras, to the small adobe house by the Rio Grande, then there is one thing I want to say from the heart. Thank you. You didn't just listen to a story. You walked with me through a journey of pain, betrayal, and finally, peace. Not everyone dares to look into the dark corners of their own family. Not everyone dares to stand back up after being hurt by the people closest to them. If any part of this story touched you, even a line, a glance, a single sentence, leave a simple dot. So I know you're here, you're listening. And if you want to walk with me in the next stories, stories about justice, about family, about fathers and mothers standing up from the deepest hurt, hit follow and turn on notifications. No rush, no pressure, just so. When you need a story, I'm still here to tell it. Thank you for listening and for staying.